Yeah, I'm going to be checking and greasing these old school wheel bearings. The old school wheel bearings are actually better because, well, you'll see why. It's not an integrated hub where you have to take the whole damn thing apart and replace it. I mean, sometimes the wheel bearings do wear out, but at least you can grease these kind. If you keep them maintained, they should be alright. But actually, I got a plastic bag on here because the sun beats down on this side and kind of eats up the tires. Also want to say, you know, I've been advocating a lot to buy USA products, but you know, when I looked at a jack stand, and I know there's Milwaukee out there and there's some other ones that, well, they're not USA anymore. This is a Pittsburgh, but it was like 80 bucks delivered. Very low profile, Chinese. And I have to tell you one thing, if you're buying something made in China and you're using it for practical stuff like this, even if it's tools or something, it's not like you're buying fluff. You know, as long as it's something that can last you and keeps you going. So anyway, you know, I don't want to necessarily tell people you gotta, you know, people do what they want, but you know, if you're in business and you got to buy a lathe or you got to buy milling equipment and it's just too much money to buy USA, but you're going to get more stuff done by what you actually accomplish here in the USA, I say, you know, do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. Because, you know, I wasn't going to, because this thing, the $1,000, even if I wanted to buy it, spend $1,000 on a floor jack. That bad boy would weigh a ton. And even this thing is kind of a pain in the ass to roll out, so I didn't want to deal with that. So anyway, took this off. Now these are the old. This is on a '78 El Camino, like a Malibu, Chevelle, Cutlass, Buick Regal. You know, 78 to 87 is about the same. You hear that? Just a hair loose. So I don't have to take the wheel off. I just need to take the cap off. I got a special adapter on the grease gun, and I can get way behind there and really inject the grease far into there and probably get it back to the inner wheel bearing. And you know, I've been meaning to do more on this car with the body work, but you can see I'm under the carport and I got that thing, but it's hot under there. A lot of clouds here in Florida, a lot of rain. It's kind of slowing me up, but I think I'm going to start on it anyway. Well, the first step is to take this little cap off. What I do is I take this big dull screwdriver and I put it down in here, tap with the hammer, and then actually I have my little tiny claw hammer in my other car. It usually works very good, but you can take this and pull it out like that. And that pry bar is actually made in the USA. Something made in the USA. And there's probably a lot of grease in here, but you see there's a cotter pin. And we're going to get the needle nose pliers and bend that back and take this off, and we're going to inject a lot of grease in here. I'm just going to add a lot of grease. It's probably good. But I know when I replaced this spindle was busted. The guy told me it was a 78 only here, but I don't think it is, but it might be true. But I'm looking at the parts replacement. They'll say 78 to 87. But the replacement spindle I put on here was slightly spun too. But it was new bearings I put in here, but it was 10 years ago, but not too many miles though. Now with these cotter pins, you just straighten them out because it's bent over, and the book tells you should replace them every time you do this, but nobody ever really does. But you should replace them every once in a while. And the way I get them out is I put the vice grips on there and I just, see, that's easier than pulling it. You know, a little trick there, okay? Then we get the channel locks and we put them on this nut. And I'm going to pull that bearing out and we're going to get some grease in there. Normally you could just adjust it just a hair loose here, but I'm going to get some grease in there, some good waterproof marine grease. Okay, so I got the bearing out. Yeah, it's probably a lot of grease in there still, even though I did this a while ago. You know, the bearing's okay. There's an ending bearing too. Now, I tried to find, and I put this out in another video, I tried to find something that was, they have a sleeve. It's not like that. It's about that long, but it's like about, probably goes from here to here. It's real thin and gets way back in there, and it gets that inner wheel bearing. But I'm going to try to get grease in there, in that inner wheel bearing, by injecting it pretty deep in here with this little needle nose thing here, which is a 10-inch. They don't make that tool anymore because nobody's got these kind of wheel bearings anymore. It's all classic cars, you know. Actually, this is more. I'll tell you what. You know what they used to even have back in the old days? You used to have a grease fitting on your water pump. Well, this does get way in there. See it? This does go way in there. Goes right back to the. This will work. This didn't work too much on the freaking Suzuki, but on this thing, see that? It goes right back. It goes all. Yeah, it goes all the way back to the bearing. I can't fill this whole thing up with grease then. Great. So that was the whole reason I got this tool. There wasn't quite enough room to get between a spindle and a hub on a Suzuki Jeep, but on a Chevy it works. Awesome. This is only like $8 too. It's just a little adapter, real long, 10-inch, with a little curved end on it. So I'll be able to fill this up with a high quality marine grade moly. Rated for wheel bearing grease. You just don't want to use ordinary grease. You don't want to use just flat chassis lube. If you're doing this kind of grease, you want to make sure it's marine grade and rated for wheel bearings. You're not really supposed to mix greases, but I can tell you one thing: it's a hell of a lot better to have it filled with a whole bunch of clean grease, and even if it's a little bit mixed up with another kind, than to have it dry. I can tell you that right now. And then when I fill that up and I put this bearing on here, it's gonna pack it in there good. This will work great. Wow, that surprised me. I didn't know that was gonna fit in there. I thought it wasn't gonna fit. Awesome. So let's fill this puppy up. Just start squeezing the trigger here. Should be filling it really good. And I don't know if it's going to see some coming out, but I know it's going in there. You can tell by the way the trigger's working. That's good. That's good. You know how much work this saves by having something like that? A lot, because normally you get at that. Nobody, when they used to do these cars back in the day, they say, "Oh yeah, do the brakes, grease the wheel bearings." They only did the outer one. They never did the inner one, because to do the inner one, you got to take the drum off, or the disc, the rotor, get a new seal, and yeah, this is filling up that sucker. Yeah, there it is. It's popping out. See the grease? It's popping out there on the bottom. And this sucker is loaded with grease. Good. Yeah, they would never do the inner seal. They would never do the inner wheel bearing, and you would still have an inner wheel bearing failure. That's probably partly why they went to the freaking hubs, because the mechanics, most of the shops, they would say, "Yeah, we do the brakes, we grease the freaking wheel bearings." They only do the outer one because it's easy to do. You just pop it out right there. You just shake this wheel like this. After you pick the castle nut off and the cotter pin, and you pull it out, and they would just do out here. But if you had this special tool, you can get way in there. And looks like we did that. So I got a lot of grease in here. It's all packed in there really good. And actually, this is Pennzoil marine grade grease, marine salt water protection, washout and corrosion protection, superior trailer wheel bearing protection. You know, designed for bearings, because there's a lot of greases out there that are only designed for doing the ball joints. They're not necessarily designed for freaking doing this shit. So that should save this puppy. And that spindle looks okay too, because I could see, you know, when I pulled the bearing out, it didn't look bad. So, and you know, you can use a big adjustable wrench on this thing. But you know, these bearings aren't that much money. Even the spindles aren't that much money. They're like, I'm almost thinking about getting raised spindles and making this into a, not one of those with the 20-inch tires, but it's where the snow will go underneath it. You got the kind that are 3-inch raised and 5 inches in the back on the springs. And then if I want to use this as a snow buggy, it won't get caught up on the bottom. So anyway, we'll get this tightened down. I'll show you how to adjust it. Okay, basically what you want to do is you tighten down the bearing, the castle nut. Now you don't want to have it too tight, because if there's a drag you'll burn it out. You want to keep turning the wheel as you tighten it down. And actually it'll give you a specification in some kind of inch-pounds of torque. But you know, I can always tell it, just snug it up. But you want to keep turning the wheel while you're tightening this down, because it could be that the grease is keeping this from turning in where it's adjusted right. And when you go to drive the car, you'll find out. So as soon as you know, once it gets down to where it's bottomed out, it's just, you know, just snug down. You want to back it off. You want to back it off where it's just right at the next notch. And you're not supposed to use the old cotter pin, but I will use the old cotter pin. And you put the old cotter pin back in. I think this is like the second time it's used, so it's not too bad. And you want to put it in where freaking raining out, where it's dropping down this way. Okay, there should be plenty of grease in there. And when you install this this cotter pin, you want to make sure it's pushed down enough that it's not going to be hitting the cap at all, you know, on the inside. And you can hear that rain. There it is. I don't like smashing the middle here, because you can bend this down and you gotta re-straighten it out. That should be good. That should be good. Anyway, that's it. So that's a wrap. And as the rain comes down, tools back up there. Of course, if this thing gets painted, you can be able to throw tools on there, unless I put truck bed lining on the hood and the top of the fenders or something, which I might do. I might do that. Anyway, that's a wrap.